Welcome back, YouTubers. My name is Andre. I'm a former chef of 10 years, been retired for 2 years, and I've had tons of time to reflect back on my industry. And I want to bring some value to you in this video. Today, what I want to talk about is what is the most important metric to use when you're about to open a restaurant? Tons of metrics, lots of numbers to look through, but what is the key one? The key one is the cost of rent, because rent is fixed and you could fix it for many years. And because it's the largest cost that you have to pay, because we are talking about a brick and mortar location, they have tons of startup costs and fixed costs that go into running the operation. The one that I like to use the most is rent. And there's a particular spin on that rent metric that is profoundly important when you are going out and looking at commercial real estate to match your concept / restaurant idea. That metric is that rent must be 10% of your monthly revenue. Let's unpack that just a little bit. So if rent is $10,000, that means you must make in revenue $100,000 a month. And what this metric is doing is it's leaving space for all of the other costs. Based on industry standards, it could tell you labor is supposed to be a certain percentage. Hey, other things are supposed to be a certain percentage. Food costs is supposed to be 25% of your total expenses. So you want rent to be roughly 10% of that. That's insane, right? But that's the metric that I will use to then validate my business concept and see if it makes any sense, just doing basic on the paper math. And we'll continue unpacking this. The first question I must ask is, based on my concept, the thing that I want to bring to market, the thing that I want to sell, whether it's sushi, whether it's coffee, whether it's burgers, whether it's pizza. Let's pick coffee as an example. How many coffees do I have to sell per month? Great question, because we're talking about coffee. Let's talk about cappuccino as an example. Let's say that you sell your cappuccino for $5. Let's say that's the market price. How many coffees do you have to sell in a month? Based on my math, you have to sell 20,000 coffees. How many per week? If we just take the 20,000 divided by 4, we have to sell 5,000 coffees. If we do per day, that's 714 coffees. Now, let's assume the property is open for 9 hours per day. How many coffees do we have to sell per hour? The answer is 79 coffees. 79 coffees per hour. Alarm bells should be going off in your head that wherever this coffee place is located, the property you are looking at, the rent is way too expensive and beyond your means. But then you say, Andre, what about all of the other things that coffee shops sell? What about cortados, macchiatos, lattes? There's different price points. What if we sell food like a bagel and cream cheese? Now we're getting into the area and having conversations about your check average. The check average is essentially that within a certain time frame, how many customers did you sell and what was their average spend? And the higher the check average, the more revenue you're going to bring into your business. So if we can increase the check average from $5, just one cappuccino, and get every single person to also buy a bagel with cream cheese, adding another $5 to $6, we are already in the ballpark of a check average that went from $5 to anywhere from $10 to $12, which will greatly increase your revenue and get you closer to hitting that $100,000 revenue that you owe per month. Why do I say all this? Because restaurants are fundamentally a J-curve. What that means is that a massive amount of money needs to be spent upfront for operating costs, and that the curve goes like this, and then below a certain level is all the costs. And when you get above the cost is when you start making profit. So the idea is that to actually surpass the $100,000 in revenue, it is just an estimated marker in which it assumes that if you go beyond rent as a cost and you factor in things like labor, insurance, food costs, plates, silverware, and many other expenses, that by the end of it, you should be around a 5 to 10% profit margin. For every dollar that you make, you get to keep between 5 cents to 10 cents. So why do I bring this up as such an important metric? The reason the back of the napkin math is so important is because just by looking at this one metric and matching it with the item that you expect to sell the most of, when you combine those two together, you can see if the property makes sense for your concept. And you could, from there, validate it. Of course, you can go down into the nitty-gritty and all of the other things that you need that are part of your operating expenses. Of course, the cappuccino will not be the only thing you sell. Now that you understand how much you have to sell of that particular product per month, the question is, how can you maximize the amount of people you sell it to? So the idea is that you're supposed to sell 79 coffees per hour. I think that's an impossible amount for a coffee shop to overcome. They need to increase the price of the coffee. They should add other things that they should sell to increase the check average per person, or they need to find a property whose rent is much lower than the 10,000. I hope you found this video fascinating and interesting, because this is exactly how I think about concepts. Till next time, thank you.